So the IndyCar schedule for the 2024 season just came out about a couple days ago, and with it there is a lot of changes, more than honestly even I thought was going to happen, to be completely honest with you. We got a couple new tracks. We actually have another race on the schedule, so it looks like they actually increased the amount of races that we'll be having next year, which is one thing that I've been clamoring IndyCar to do for many years now. They're starting to get on the right track for that. However, the way they're doing it, I'm personally not a big fan of. And they also made one massive change, which we'll get to later on in the episode. And let's just say I don't like the direction that IndyCar is going. I wouldn't be surprised if I end up ranting about IndyCar in this episode because it feels like every time I talk about IndyCar, I always end up ranting about the series. Probably just because I have high expectations for the series, but I mean, overall, the schedule, I'll just say right off the bat, it's not bad. I've definitely seen worse schedules. However, kind of like with IndyCar as a whole, it does leave a lot to be desired. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so before we begin, I just find it completely hilarious how all the NASCAR fans who are waiting on the 2024 schedule to come out, they're basically like, "Come on, NASCAR, IndyCar got their schedule out first. Why can't we get our schedule right now?" Acting like IndyCar and NASCAR need to consult each other to release their schedules. Like people made it sound like IndyCar getting their schedule out before NASCAR got their schedule come out was kind of like a bad sign for NASCAR, which is like NASCAR has more races, they have bigger brands. It's probably a lot harder to get the NASCAR schedule out more than the IndyCar schedule. So I don't consider that a bad thing. I mean, IndyCar can do what they want. They don't need NASCAR's approval to get their schedule out before NASCAR does. Even though I personally don't know why NASCAR's taking so long to get their schedule out, I just want to throw that out there. Is that just because NASCAR doesn't have their schedule out, that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing that IndyCar did it before they did. So I just want to throw it out there for all you crazy people out there. But let's go over the 2024 IndyCar schedule because, like I mentioned, there's a lot of new things. Honestly, even I was surprised about. And I mean, let's just jump straight into it. So I'm going to put the schedule on the screen and I'm basically going to talk about what I think of it. We're going to start from the first race of the season until we get all the way to the last race of the season. And I'll just give my thoughts as we dive deeper and deeper into the schedule. So the season kicks off at the streets of St. Petersburg on March 10th on NBC. Basically how it's been, really, I think since 2013, 2014, so over a decade at this point, and I mean, I don't got a problem with it. This has always been one of the best races of the season. It's a great start off to the season, gets everyone excited, and usually the best way to start off the season is to have a really good race. St. Petersburg 9 times out of 10 delivers on that. So I don't have a problem at all with St. Petersburg being the season opener on March 10th. What I do have a problem with is the massive month-plus long gap between St. Petersburg and the streets of Long Beach. Now you might be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, isn't the Thermal Club 1 Million Challenge in the middle of all that? Well, yeah, but the problem is the Thermal Challenge is an exhibition race. It's basically IndyCar's version of the All-Star race at the Thermal Club. And even then, you still got a 2-week break between race 1 and the exhibition, which, I mean, nothing wrong with that. Multiple motorsports have 2-week-long breaks. I mean, Formula 1 does it all the time, so not a problem. But if we're taking out the exhibition, which doesn't count, then we're talking over a month-long break from race 1 to race 2. You can't build any sort of momentum for your series if you have over a month-long break. That happens every single year. Every single year, the first race of the season happens in IndyCar, and then they take such a month-long break, and then the race 2 happens. It's like, oh yeah, IndyCar has a race going on. I forget about that. Just all momentum dies. I'm not excited for the season anymore, and fans just aren't excited for the season anymore. Well, yeah, it is for Long Beach, so maybe they're like, hey, if we give it to Long Beach, that, you know, it's a marquee event that people might get a little more excited. You know what would get me a lot more excited for the IndyCar season to start? Not having to wait from March 10th to April 21st between races 1 and 2. To me, that's just bad scheduling. And even the Thermal Club, if we say, all right, we are going to include the Thermal Club as the de facto race 2, we're still talking a near month-long break, March 21st to April 21st. I mean, come on. How are you expected to get fans excited about that when 9 times out of 10, other fans I've talked to, they've even said that they forget that IndyCar is still going on because there's such a massive break. So I don't like that at all. And this is where the inconsistencies of the schedule really start to show. So the Streets of Long Beach, a crown jewel event for IndyCar, it's on the USA Network. Why are you having one of your biggest races of the year, probably your biggest race besides the Indy 500, on cable? I mean, that's a TV deal with IndyCar and NBC and all that stuff, but why are we having Long Beach on USA, but then a week later when we go to Barber, we're on NBC? If people want to watch Long Beach more than Barber, what are we doing here? To me, that just makes absolutely no sense. And again, scheduling-wise, the tracks I don't have a problem with, at least not yet. Tracks I don't have a problem with. Long Beach has been a great race. Barber's been a fantastic race as well. But we go from a near month-long break to then back-to-back weekends. Why not just shorten the gap and then just have a 2-week break between even the Thermal Club in Long Beach and then a 2-week break to Barber? That just makes no sense. The inconsistency is ridiculous. So those are the first 2 months of the IndyCar season. We have a 1-point paying race in the month of March. 2 if you want to count, 2 races in general if you want to count the Thermal Club. And then we get 2 races at the back end of April. And again, this is why IndyCar doesn't generate interest from fans, because most of the time with these schedules, they forget the race is going on because the scheduling is just bad. But anyways, let's move on. So the Indianapolis Motor Speedway kicks off the month of May with the road course on May 11th. Here's the thing. If you're trying to generate hype for the month of May, the month of May is known, for the Indianapolis 500. At least to me, I would expect the month of May to begin in the beginning of May. Oh, we're in the month of May. This is IndyCar's month. Why are we starting IndyCar's month nearly a quarter of the way through the month? Almost at the halfway point of the month. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. And then we got the 2-week break from the IMS road course to the Indianapolis 500, which again, you got the qualifying week in between there, so there's really no problem with that in my opinion. Again, so far, I don't have a problem with the tracks themselves. The Thermal Club is still to be determined because we've never been there, so that can go either way. But as for the tracks themselves, I don't have a problem with. My problem is with how the races are laid out on the schedule. You got a month-long break, in fact, a longer than a month-long break from race 1 to race 2, and about a month-long break if you count the Thermal Club. Then you go to back-to-back weeks. Then the month of May starts halfway through the month of May, and then it's the Indianapolis 500. To me, that just makes that makes no sense to me. But anyway, let's move on to the month of June. The month of June has 3 races on the schedule. Starts off on June 2nd with the Streets of Detroit, which is a brand new, it's not a brand new layout because we race in the new Detroit layout this year. Pelot dominated that race. Streets of Detroit, it wasn't the greatest race in the world. Pelot pretty much just dominated, but it was very unique. So again, I don't really have a problem with the Streets of Detroit. Then we go to Road America a week later on NBC. This I don't have a problem with. I've always loved the Road America. It's a fantastic venue, a fantastic race. It's a shame that NASCAR doesn't go there anymore. So hopefully, at least on the NASCAR side, that's a temporary thing. But I don't have a problem with IndyCar Road America. Then we skip a couple weeks to June 23rd, where we go to Laguna Seca. Laguna Seca, which used to be the season finale, now no longer the season finale, kind of slammed back midway through the season. I don't have a problem with it. I like Laguna Seca. I know the racing hasn't been great there, but I'm just a big fan of the track personally. It's very unique. It's a historic track for IndyCar. I mean, the corkscrew alone, in my opinion, is enough to have it on the schedule. maybe with, a different venue, different things here and there, maybe it'll generate some new interest for Laguna Seca, but we'll just have to wait and see. Then July 7th, we go to the Mid-Ohio Sports Course. Again, another mainstay of the IndyCar schedule. I don't have a problem with this at all. Then we get to the Iowa doubleheader. Now, this is the first thing I'm going to complain about with the IndyCar schedule, and that is doubleheaders. I'm personally not a big fan of doubleheaders, just in motorsports in general. I like my schedules to have diversity. I want to go to different tracks, and if you're going to have two races, at least space them out. I prefer to have them spaced out than just going back to back. So we got the Iowa doubleheader, which has been around for a few years now, but I'll get into this more when we get to the Milwaukee doubleheader. To me, the doubleheaders on the ovals just feels like IndyCar just kind of being like, you see, we got multiple oval races on the schedule, guys. But to me, it just feels like a cheap fix for the increasing oval issue rather than, trying to actually get more ovals on the schedule. I don't have a problem with the track. I love Iowa. I wish the Cup Series would go to Iowa on the NASCAR side of things. But again, I'm just not a big fan of doubleheaders in general. Then we move on to the streets of Toronto. Again, I don't have a problem with this. Another mainstay on the IndyCar schedule. You see a theme here. I don't have a problem really with the tracks. It's more just the placement, for, where they are on the schedule. And as you hear now, I haven't really complained a lot about where these races are being placed on the schedule because the schedule fills itself out at the end of the season. So it's like the IndyCar schedule. It's like, okay, we're going to have a strong end, but we're going to have a terrible start. Why not just balance it out? Balance it out, not just have one, just overload the back end, but just completely have the front end completely scarce of any sort of content, any sort of racing. So let's move on to August 17th. Worldwide Technology Raceway on the IndyCar side of things. Another short oval. I love Gateway. It's one of my favorite tracks just in general. On just motorsports as a whole, IndyCar's always had great racing there. Yeah, Scott Dixon won by I think over 20 seconds, but that was more due to pit strategy rather than just him going out and just absolutely dominating the field. So Gateway, I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't have a problem with Portland either. Portland, which when it came on the schedule, I believe in 2019, it was kind of riddled in a little bit of controversy. People wondering, is this actually going to be a good race? And it was a good race. So, and it's constantly produced good racing, so I don't have a problem with that at all. So, I mean, Portland on the schedule, I'm personally fine with it. I love Portland as well. I mean, most of the tracks that IndyCar goes to, I am a big fan of. Let's just say that. Then we get to the second doubleheader of the schedule. And this is where I'm really going to just have my gripes with IndyCar. The Milwaukee Mile is returned to the IndyCar schedule. I personally love that. IndyCar, very much a Midwestern type of series. Obviously, you got the Indianapolis 500 in the Midwest. It's a mainstay. So I'm thinking, okay, if we are going to, it's kind of like NASCAR with the South. You want to have that core foundation in the South. Well, IndyCar, in my opinion, should have that core foundation on the Midwest. And the Milwaukee Mile just further shows that. But my problem is, again, why are we having a doubleheader? Why are we having another doubleheader? And if you haven't noticed yet, Texas Motor Speedway is off the schedule. Texas, which has actually produced pretty good IndyCar racing the past couple years, gone. Now, the reason being is because it looks like Texas is going to turn itself into a super speedway, very similar to Atlanta, to try to improve the NASCAR racing. But, I mean, in my opinion, one of the things that makes IndyCar very unique is that, they do go to these, or at least at this point they used to, go to these big, fast tracks like Texas, Pocono, back in the day, Michigan and Auto Club. And now the cars are as safer than ever, and we're still taking super speedways off the schedule. Because besides the Indianapolis 500, I mean, you got Iowa, you got Gateway, and you got Milwaukee. You don't have any other ovals on the schedule. And to the people who say, "Oh, it's because it's so dangerous. We can't have IndyCar going to these big ovals because it's dangerous. Really? So why do we still go to the Indianapolis 500? That's a genuine question. Because if danger is, at the end of the day, the main culprit in all this, why do we still race at the Indy 500? Oh, it's the biggest race in the world, that's why. Okay, so does that give us an excuse to put the drivers' lives in danger just so we can have the biggest race in the world? So what are we saying? That the money is more important than the driver's safety? If we're going to use danger as the excuse for why we are constantly removing super speedways off the schedule, then the Indy 500 has to go. By default, the Indy 500 needs to be gone. But you're going to say, oh, let's make an exception. Okay, well, that makes no sense in my opinion. Because we've already lost Pocono. We've already lost Texas. And in fact, I think more deaths have happened at Indianapolis for IndyCar more than any other track in its history. We still go there. So I personally don't buy the, oh, IndyCar needs to stop going to super speedways because it's so dangerous. Oh, but let's just keep the Indianapolis 500 just because. I don't buy it. Like, we should have a mix of big, fast tracks. I mean, I'll talk about this maybe later on, maybe in a different episode, but one of the reasons, in my opinion, why the short tracks in NASCAR don't get the same viewer and, attention that the big fast tracks do is because people want to see speed. I mean, let's be honest here, folks. No one wants to see cars going at less than 100 miles an hour. Well, yes, there's beating and banging. We want to see the speed of these cars. We want to see the cars hurling down at nearly 200 miles an hour. Yeah, IndyCar still goes fast on these ovals, but these short ovals, but again, the spectacle of Texas or Pocono is way more than the spectacle at a Gateway or a Milwaukee. That's just the truth, folks. So there's my rant on the oval side of things, but we still got the season finale, which is the streets of Nashville, which has themselves a whole new layout, which I believe they will be driving down the streets of Broadway as well, also on big NBC. I personally love this. I think that Nashville is slowly starting to be integrated into the motorsports culture, and I personally love it. Like, I've said on the NASCAR side of things that I would personally not be opposed to Nashville Super Speedway getting the season finale. It's had great racing ever since it's gotten there, and it's a unique type of track, and again, it's that Nashville market. So IndyCar is already getting ahead of the curve, and they're having their season finale in Nashville. I personally love that. Of all the changes on the schedule, this one is easily my favorite. Going to Nashville, a growing sports market, and having your season finale there. I love it. This is easily my favorite decision by IndyCar for their schedule because I think it works. Again, such a big market like Nashville, and you're racing on Broadway nonetheless. I think this could be one of the biggest races for IndyCar in quite some time, especially because it's the season finale. Imagine the celebration for whoever's the champion. It would just be fantastic. This is, besides the Indy 500, probably my most anticipated race of the season. Now, in terms of some things that I would personally change for the IndyCar schedule, I would personally take out the double headers. Starting off with the tracks, I would personally take out some of the double headers and put some actual ovals on the schedule. Like, me being biased, go to Homestead, Miami. Homestead, yeah, they got the NASCAR side, they got the NASCAR, round of 8 race, but I'm pretty sure that they only seat about 40,000 people. You get 20,000 people in IndyCar, it wouldn't be an eyesore on the TV side of things, and I'm pretty sure the racing would be fantastic. But that's my big thing. Just add more ovals and just space out the schedule better. Again, it should never be where the first race of the season and the second race of the season are over a month apart. Because you're not going to get fans invested and the momentum is just going to die. So, those are my two biggest gripes with the IndyCar schedule. If you're not going to add more races, which they clearly did, they now have 18 races instead of the usual 17. But if you're going to do that, space them out better. I get you want to have a strong end to the season, but you also need to have a strong start to the season as well. Because how am I going to be invested for nearly that month-long time of no IndyCar racing? Because then guess what? That's where Formula One starts to draw in the audience. That's where NASCAR draws in all the audience. And then IndyCar is kind of just like, hey guys, we're back. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. I don't think it ever will work. So if IndyCar is going to add races to the schedule, at least add them to the front end of the schedule and not to the back. But there are my thoughts on the IndyCar schedule right there. I mean, overall, like I said, I don't think it's a bad schedule. However, even though I only have really 2 big gripes with the schedule, they're big enough to where it would I would dock some points in the IndyCar schedule. Like, if you had to ask me, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what do I rate the schedule? Probably a 6.5 to a 7. If it wasn't for, if they were able to tighten up the schedule gaps, the race gaps a little more, if they were able to, add a couple of new tracks and not just have a bunch of double headers, it probably would go to an 8 for me. But 6.5, 6 out of 10, that's where I stand with the IndyCar schedule. Again, not bad, but leaves a lot to be desired. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on the 2024 IndyCar schedule. Again, overall, I'd probably give it around a 6 out of 10. Not a bad schedule, but too many gaps in the schedule. And on top of that, too much of the same with 2 double headers that are, I didn't even mention this, but are really close to each other as well. So other than those 2, I mean, I like the selection of tracks, minus the lack of super speedways. But other than that, it's an alright schedule. It's a 6 out of 10 schedule. There's really nothing more I could say. I already said it. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, if you guys want to listen and watch all previous episodes of the Motorsport Ministry, please like and subscribe as well. It would mean a ton. If you guys want to follow me on my social medias, follow me on Twitter and TikTok at Motor Minister. But once again, thank you guys so much, and we will see you in the next one.